All right, we're live. Ready to go? Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. It is 7:05 on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. And I now call to order the 2130th regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. But before we take roll call, let's see, would the re-elected city council members, Lauren Peterson, Melody Williams, and Heather Sherman, please join the clerk at the podium or on your screen to take your oath of office.
Are you gonna tell us what to say or do I have to bring my thing? Okay. We do it all together?
Told me forget.
Okay, raise your right hand. I state your name,
I, Melody Williams,
Lauren Peterson.
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States and of the state of Washington,
That I am.
that I'm a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and all local ordinances,
and all local ordinances.
and that I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and
And I will
impartially.
faithfully and impartially
And I will faithfully and impartially. It's not helping.
discharge the duties of the office of city councillor for the city of College Place,
discharge the duties of the city councilor
Of the city councilor for the city.
Yeah.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Doesn't matter how the
Yeah.
election was, you guys did that, you got large. What I've seen before is people just don't even bother to vote or they skip to vote, and you guys got a good percentage of votes voted for you. So that shows a confidence in my opinion. All right, Sherry, will you please take roll call?
Mayor Hernandez,
Present?
Councilmember Cleveland,
Here,
Councilmember Espinoza,
present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
and Council members Jessup and Boyle have asked to be excused. We do have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Will you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Before we go into public comment, I do on behalf of the city, and I'm sure the city council will join me in sending our condolences to Walla Walla and Walla Walla Fire Department Station 1 on the passing of engineer Ryan Pleasant this past weekend. I'm sure you all have heard. I've asked Mike to send flowers to the station on behalf of the city and sending our condolences to his team, his fire station, his home there. And I ask that you keep his family and his friends who loved him in your thoughts and some prayers of comfort for them. All right, so moving on to public comment. Sherry, did anyone submit a comment in advance?
I did not receive any comments.
Okay, do we have anyone in virtual attendance?
We have one attendee.
Okay, so if anyone in virtual attendance would like to speak at this time, please raise your hand. If you're connected by phone, *9 will raise your hand for you. Nothing? Okay. Then we're going to move on to consent agenda, which consists of the agenda for tonight, January 9th, 2024. The city council meeting minutes from December 12th, 2023. The 2024 confirmation appointments to boards and commissions. The June 2023 check register and financials. The July 2023 check registers and financials. The August 2023 check registers and financials. Boy, they've been busy. And excusing the absence of Councilmember Jessup and Boyle. Are there any items any council member would like to remove from the consent agenda at this time? And if not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Great, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Next, we're going to presentations, and we have two of them on the agenda tonight. The first is I will present a Martin Luther King Jr. Day proclamation. So it's a proclamation from the office of the mayor of the city of College Place, Washington. Whereas this month marks the 95th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth. And whereas Dr. King dedicated his life to advancing equity and social justice and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work to build a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King taught us that we are measured not by where we stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but by the stands we take during times of challenge and controversy. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is observed each year on the third Monday in January and is the only federal holiday designated as a national day of service. And whereas each of us can and must contribute to making our communities better with increased opportunity for the whole community, therefore, I, Norma L. Hernandez, Mayor of the City of College Place, Washington, do hereby proclaim January 15th, 2024 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of College Place. And I encourage all residents to reflect on Dr. King's teachings and seek to put them into action through service to our community.
here.
Thank you. Okay. Next, is a holiday yard of the month for December 2023, and Chief Tamaris, you are going to be presenting to us on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. It's fun to report on these. We do the summer yards of the month, and then of course we do the seasonal yard of the month in December for all the Christmas lights and decorations. Then this year, it went to the Tampa family. It should be a photo there of Brian and Mary and his daughters, Madison and Brindley. They've lived in College Place for a year, and they were just thrilled to be recognized for the work they did on their yard. And I know all the neighbors appreciated it.
Look at that smile. That alone makes you want to celebrate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, great family. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. So there's no public hearings on the agenda tonight, and so we're going to move on to action items, which there's 3 of them on the agenda. First, Mr. McAndrews will present on the contract amendment for professional services for the lift station number 5 replacement.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. We've talked about this project several times. This is our Lift Station 5 project over on Southwest First. We have a professional services agreement with JUB Engineers for the design of that project. And we're nearly ready to go to bid. The plan is to put it out to add, hopefully mid-January, so within a couple weeks here. But there's a little bit of overages in the design from what was initially agreed upon. So this amendment would include another $40,000 cover work really that JUB's already done, which is for some additional permitting, and then a few changes to the telemetry and a few other tweaks to the design, as well as including the construction phase services for the project, which would be anything from project management to construction meetings, submittals, site visits, construction observations, record drawings, things like that, as well as through Department of Ecology, they're requiring some cultural monitoring, which is going to be pretty expensive. So that's an additional $535,155. And so this was all planned for. It's just the initial agreement didn't include the construction phase. It was just included the design. And so now that we're kind of through design, it's adding on that construction phase services. So any questions?
All right, let's go to council members for questions. Council member Cleveland.
No questions. I was initially going to ask, but it sounded like we had an overage that wasn't planned for, but the way you explained it is like, we're just going into the next phase and we're authorizing that next phase to begin. So that's why it's just phrased a little bit funny, but no questions. Makes sense.
Yeah, just to clarify, there is a small overage. The $40,000 portion is an overage. And that includes things like the state environmental review process. There were some changes to that process, which took a little bit more time and cost more money. And then some changes to telemetry and controls. And then through the design process, we removed initially as part of this, we were doing some of our cured in place piping on this project. And we separated that into the other project that's including all of that cured in place piping. So and then some general project coordination and stuff. So there is a small portion, that 40,000, and JUB shared with me that their overage is actually more like 65,000, but they didn't feel right coming back after the fact to ask for that full amount, and so they're only asking for that 40,000. I thought that was fair.
Thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa.
No questions?
Councilmember Peterson.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions.
I do have a question. Regarding the cultural monitoring. Who's Plateau CRM? Do we know who that is? It says that's who JUB is going to be contracting with.
I think that is their subcontractor that specializes in those services. So Department of Ecology is requiring somebody to be on site while the digging and certain activities are taking place to make sure they can stop all work if we dig something up or expose something. And so Plateau CRM is the firm that JUB is planning to use for that.
Okay. So it says on this, sorry, on item A, task 5, cultural monitoring on JUB's thing. The second line, second sentence says the number of working for which cultural monitoring is required. Was the word day supposed to be there maybe?
Good catch. I'm sure the word day was supposed to be there and I didn't catch that because there's a cost per day.
Right, and that's what concerns me, because then I see there's an $1,800 cost per day if it exceeds what's agreed on, so I'm just wondering.
So There's another point in here. I apologize while I find it.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
Cause I'm wondering, are we paying $1,800 a day?
I think we're planning for 60 days worth of it. On page 5, for time and materials, they have planned $116,155 for cultural monitoring. And this is all required by Department of Ecology and is likely going to be on just about any project that we do moving forward.
116,000.
Well, that's for this particular project because they're estimating, I think, 60 days. Yeah, 60 working days is what they're estimating needing this monitor on site for.
And this payment goes to a for-profit company, or is it going to tribal entities?
I believe for-profit company. That is a good question. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike?
Only reason I know this is because I worked with them in Colfax, so I
Okay.
know it works over there. It's a for-profit company that has tribal members who constitute the.
Okay, so it's a for-profit owned by tribal members,
Yeah.
is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, and Robert will attest to this when we had the meeting with ecology, because I was feeling they were being. It's getting to a point where they're being very nitpicky as far as this monitoring, and that's just their MO going forward, sadly, because I pointed out to them that, it's one thing if you're doing these projects in like a greenfield area, but an area where you already have a road and stuff, that seems pretty punitive, and they didn't care. They just said that's the breaks and deal with it. So,
Yeah, it sounds like a little handshake kind of deal.
yeah.
Sorry. Okay. And last question, is this a Washington State tribal company? Is it a eastern side company or?
Yeah. Again, going back to my Colfax experience, they are based out of Pullman, Washington.
Okay.
And then they have they essentially have sub-consultants that work under their umbrella all over like Eastern Washington.
And are they from multiple tribes, do you know, or they belong to a tribe?
At least back then, last time I worked with them goes back to 2016. So I
Okay.
haven't really researched them in the 7 years since I've not.
So for like us in
Or-
particular, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Cayuse, Umatilla and Walla Walla, the Confederated Tribes is part of this, or do we know?
I would not know that.
Okay.
So.
All right. I'm just wondering how regionally significant, you know what I mean? Appropriate it is. I guess I'm just trying to think of that, since we are in that tribal land, are they the ones monitoring?
I will say in other projects, JUB has used other contractors, but they weren't even on this side of the state. So
Sure.
that was even a bigger misnomer. And then my bigger issue with the other cultural subcontractors they were using is they had some, I would say they definitely had some very interesting opinions about what constitutes a public record. And when they were putting together these cultural reports, they're saying, oh, we don't want it anywhere public facing. And it's like, well, if a city government agency is paying you, that becomes a public record.
Absolutely.
And some of these other this other company that won't be mentioned, there was a very enlightening back and forth. So I requested them to try to find someone that understands like public records laws, because we shouldn't be taking the hit on that just because they don't want to. A public record's a public record.
Yeah,
so.
right. I mean, if we're gonna be paying this, I understand, I'm not having, but I'd like at least for it to be with the tribal land that we are on, at least.
So let me
Be
chime in.
represented.
So the monitors are archaeologists who are trained to look for its cultural
Got
significant
it.
things. So if something is found, they stop work and they call in the local tribes for consultation is how I understand it. So
Okay.
yeah,
that
they
makes
may
more
not
sense.
be the expert on the actual artifact that is found, but they are there to tell us, stop
Something
work.
significant.
Nothing more can happen until this has been reviewed, and then they get the appropriate people in. So that's my understanding of it.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be the local tribes that are physically on site. But they would be consulted if something were to be found.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Still financially painful,
Yeah,
Yes.
it will be.
and it's quite a cost burden, but it makes more sense of how it's being done. Okay. Any questions or comments from the council? Well, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any more because since I brought up something different. Okay,
Thanks for being on top of that, Madam Mayor.
thank you.
So is this process, I'm sorry, is this process applied to all activities? Or if there's already a developed area that we're going into, it would not apply to that? Or is this into, how would you define it into
There,
new?
it's become a little bit of a gray area as far as I'm concerned. Because I think historically it really applied to if you're getting into new undeveloped areas. And that's what Mike was alluding to in our conversation with them. We challenged them on a little bit and said, this is on a road that's already been built. There's already houses built here. It's already been disturbed once. And they didn't seem to care. They said, this is just likely the process that's going to be happening for any of your projects in the future. And so we were really kind of put on notice to plan and budget accordingly for future projects as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, we're under the desert. They basically gave us a cautionary tale and said, well, going forward, you just better plan for it in the future because that's just how it is. So deal with it. And I would say historically, it used to be a lot more toward greenfield infrastructure out in the periphery, but in the last couple of years, it's encroaching more and more into projects in the middle of well-established areas. So, for instance, we had to pay for monitoring building the sidewalk on 6th and 8th Street. Those roads have been there for decades, and we still have to pay for a monitor for that.
Councilmember Williams?
I just wanted to chime in a little bit on that. When I was at Ecology, Ecology was the messenger, but it's the national, not national, but the State Historic Preservation Office that sets the policy. And I think they've found in recent years a few times where despite previous construction, the previous construction just like paved right over it, literally. And that's why they've been a little more gun shy lately in saying, no, you have to go on places that they wouldn't have in the past. It is unfortunate, I think, but the intent is good.
Agreed. Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, do we have a motion for this contract amendment?
Councilmember Williams, I will move to authorize the city administrator to sign the contract amendment, increasing the current contract from $387,880 to $963,025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, Mr. McAndrews, you're up still to present on the contract amendment for professional services for the 6th Street water main replacement.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so this is, we've talked about this a little bit before. We've been working with JUB engineers on design while we're looking for funding for the Southeast 6th Street water main replacement, which previously was planned to go from College to about 8. I guess unfortunately, when we were working on our Southwest 6th Street sidewalk project, it became apparent we needed to do a little bit more road repair. Things kind of grew a little bit, as I think you guys are aware, and that road ended up ultimately getting paved. Well, that pavement that we put on there was really just like a very thin Band-Aid because when we realized that we needed more road work there, we consulted with maintenance crews and started looking at our underground infrastructure before we did a road rebuild as part of that project. And it became apparent that the water main under Southwest 6 from College to Bade was in not the best shape. We've had a few main breaks through there, and we became aware that we probably wanted to do a project to fix that. So we scrambled at that time and got some costs together to try to figure out if we can rebuild the water main and then rebuild the road before we put it all back together. And it was just not going to be in the cards in such a short order. So we elected to go ahead and put the road back together with a very thin asphalt lift. If you drive it right now, it looks very nice, but it's not going to last forever. That was kind of intentional. We kept the costs down to just put it back. And so we consulted JEV engineers along with the Southeast 6 project. It seemed like a seamless transition or addition to include Southwest 6. So the water main essentially just goes from Date to Bade, crossing, spanning both sides of College Avenue. And so this is an amendment to the 6th Street water main project with JEB for their design to include Southwest 6th Street. So the west side of College Avenue, which would ultimately include water main, curb and gutter on the south side of the road, stormwater infrastructure, and then the road rebuild that really we wanted to do when we realized there was road improvements needed as we opened it up for sidewalks. I guess, yeah, any questions?
Councilmember Cleveland, questions or comments?
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa?
No questions.
Councilmember Pearson, sorry.
No questions.
I was just gonna say Councilmember Lawrence, sorry.
It works.
Councilmember Williams,
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions.
I do have another question, just when is expectation of this work to start?
So right now this is just to authorize the design work. So this would get JEB on board to figure out exactly what needs to happen, what the scope of it's going to be, put to design together. And then part of this is also them helping us with funding. And so a lot of it's going to be funding dependent. It's not so emergent that we need to rip up the road tomorrow and start rebuilding this water main, but it made sense to try to tackle it at the same time as the main on the other side of College Avenue. And we think it might be a little bit more appealing to the funding agencies to have a larger project. So
Okay, I was just wondering, just
with any luck, we'll finish design in 2024 and construct in 2025.
that's plenty of time for the people to kind of take their breather from the road being closed.
Yeah, yes,
That was my only reason for asking.
yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the city administrator to sign contract amendment to the 6th Street Water Main Replacement Project, increasing total time and materials contract from $102,000 to $197,000.
Second.
Great, we have first and second. Any additional discussion?
I guess something I would add is in the future, we will probably want to communicate in a newsletter or somehow, because for people that are not involved in this process like we are right now, it's going to look like it's going to look interesting, and so, that's hard to explain that, and that gets complicated and all that. But anyway, somehow to summarize why we're tearing up a brand new street.
Yeah, no, I'm very aware of that. I was just having a conversation with some other staff a couple weeks ago that we're going to really want to do some public outreach before we dive in there. And as far as a lot of folks would think, we're just tearing up this brand new road that we just put in. And so yeah, I will want to make sure we do some sort of public outreach to explain the process and how we got to where we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And there'll still be people that don't understand or don't agree, unfortunately, but it would have cost us a lot more and it would have been a mad scramble to try to take it on when the road was already open. That's why that road sat unpaved as long as it did, is we were scrambling, trying to figure out what we needed to do and if it was in the cards to take on at that time. So it just wasn't. No problem.
All right. If there's no further discussion, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate all that. You know, it's never easy having to come with those. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Rickard, you're up next with Lions Park improvements.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So we have a low bidder. We opened bids December 7th and we received 2 bids, one from Nelson Construction Corporation and the second bidder was Apollo Incorporated. They ranged from 5.7 to 6.8. The engineer's estimate was 5.5 million. The low bidder was Nelson Construction at that $5,779,913.88. So that's within what we budgeted for the calendar year for the project, which was $6 million. So we're asking council to award to Nelson Construction in the amount of that 5.7 million, with a contingency of 220,000 roughly, to bring us to a total of $6 million for the construction project.
All right, Councilmember Cleveland, questions or comments?
No questions, but hooray, finally. This is awesome.
Indeed. Councilmember Espinosa,
No questions.
Councilmember Peterson.
So with this amount, this covers how much, everything except for.
This covers everything except for the community building, basically.
Okay.
So it addresses all the stormwater components, the dredging of the pond, separating the creek, the pathways, the playground, the splash pad, the picnic shelters, restrooms, new turf, new irrigation system, new parking lot, everything that we have been talking about.
So everything but the
community building, that's.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, okay. Thank you.
And the bronze statue of the city council.
Much thinner, much better looking.
Yeah, when do we post that?
Cost, they're just.
Councilmember Williams.
No questions, but I would second Councilmember Cleveland's comments.
Indeed, Councilmember Sherman.
No questions, but this is exciting. Yay.
All right, on that happy note, do we, if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion?
I motion to award the Lions Park Improvement Project to Nelson Construction Corps in the amount of $5,779,913.88 with a contingency amount of $220,000 or $220,086.12 for a total approved construction budget of $6 million.
I'll second.
Second.
All right, we've got a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Get moving. Right in the snow, right, right on time for the snow to come. All right, thank you. All right, we have one administrative report on the agenda, and it's the 2024 salary ordinance presented by Ms. Doty.
Good evening, everyone. This isn't anything new. Every year in January, we update the salary ordinance to reflect any budgeted changes. So everything this year, there's no huge surprises. Unrepresented contract employees came in at 3.6 based upon the CPI. Police sergeants at a 5%, and also the police union employees at a 5%. Public union employees are 3.4 based upon their contract, which is based upon the CPI. We just approved you guys just approved the firefighter union employee new contract, and their increase this year will be 6%. We did remove the reserve officer position from the salary ordinance. George Bennett was our last reserve officer, and he's now a full-time officer, and we're not going to have the reserve program anymore. So, and then we added 2 new positions to the budget, the fire lieutenant and fire marshal. So we'll do some promotional testing. Those aren't new positions, they're just promotional opportunities for the firefighters. And then I think I skipped over unrepresented employees who aren't covered under a contract. They fall in line with the public union employees at 3.4%. We do have 2 new positions that were in the budget, the capital project manager and a cross connection specialist. Those are not reflected in this salary ordinance, simply because I wasn't able to get the salary studies completed. So those will either be ready for you when this comes back to you for approval at the next council meeting, or we'll just have to update the salary ordinance again when those numbers are ready. So any questions?
Councilmember Cleveland? Councilmember Espinosa? Councilmember Peterson?
No questions.
Councilmember Williams?
No questions.
Councilmember Sherman?
No questions.
Okay, Sean, so that you don't feel left out, I have a question.
Oh, no.
It's simple. What's a cross connection specialist?
I think, so I'm going to take a swing at it and then Robert can jump in. Right, we cross connection has to do with backflow, I believe. And so right now, I believe Kevin, our water quality operator, kind of is taking care of that, but really it's become too much. We need somebody to focus on that. Robert, go.
Hey, good job, Sean. Thank you. Yeah, cross connection specialist would be the person at the city that runs our cross connection program, which is our backflow prevention program. Critical for keeping our water system safe. So right now, Kevin, our water quality operator, is managing that, as well as running the rest of all our wells and everything that goes with that. There are certainly times of the year where he's bogged down. So the intent with this cross connection specialist is that will be his or her focus, and they will hopefully have additional bandwidth to help out with some other water aspects. And I'm hoping it'll be somebody that's technically savvy enough they can take on some of our other technical things, maybe help with asset management and GIS and things, but the main focus will be cross connection.
Okay, thank you.
And they go out to businesses and test is a big part of it.
Yeah, yes and no. There will be everybody that has to do backflow tests will have to report their backflow tests to this person. So they will help manage our program. They will check our tests. We have a relatively new program that the backflow testers submit those to. But this person will be in charge of that program and will work with the local testers. They will be in charge of running the city has, I should know the number, but over 100 backflow assemblies ourselves. And so they will be in charge of those, and we have a contract for somebody to come and run those tests. And so all of that will fall under this person. So cross connection, think backflow devices. That's probably a term you might be more familiar with. It's the same idea.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I had
If
no
I
idea.
can jump in, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I'd be happy to invite you to my lecture when I do my lecture on cross connections, but basically a backflow preventer keeps your shower drain water out of your drinking water.
Exactly.
And I think it's mandated by state law that we have a program. Is that right, Robert?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
mandated that we have the program and that it's mandated whether we send notices out or anything that people that have those devices have them tested annually. And over the past couple years as we were transitioning between personnel and implementing a new program, some of those notices were not sent out, and there were times where some folks just didn't realize or didn't think they needed to do the test. So this is really, we're revamping the program and getting it back up to really where it should be.
Councilmember Peterson?
That is a really good question that I do not know the answer to. No, there's definitely some that fail every year, and I mean, it's typically handled, the backflow tester tests it, fails, he notifies. So if it's an irrigation, for instance, he or she notifies the homeowner that your backflow test failed. They will need to make a repair and get retested. Some of the backflow testers also make repairs, some of them don't, so they'll refer you to somebody else to make a repair or replacement. I think most of them will come in and retest at least once for free. I don't know that for sure, but yeah, I don't know the percentage. I could find that out for you if you like. Okay, sure.
Councilmember Peterson, you're not getting picked up. We can't hear you.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Okay, not only did I learn what a cross-connection specialist, now I also understand why that backflow order comes every year. I never understood why. All right.
Because you don't want to drink your shower water?
Hey, I apologize. I need to remember to hit that green button. I know it's, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
All right, so we're done with that, where there's no informational reports and we do not have an executive session. So we're down to our closing items. Is there any other business from council members for go to the order? Councilmember Peterson?
We got snow coming.
We do.
What do you think?
We are ready. I've spoken with staff. Our equipment is ready. It's put together. We have sanding rock and salt on hand. Staff have been briefed and are going to be briefed again tomorrow on our reminding them of our policies and looking at routes. And I'm planning to be over at the Public Works Yard first thing Thursday morning. So if they have questions, they can ask me directly. But yes, we are ready for it.
The predictions have been all over the map. It's the first time I think I've seen the National Weather Service say that they didn't want to hold to their prediction because it was the spectrum of the outcome over here in the next few.
Sure.
Yeah.
Every time I've looked, it's been drastically different from
Yeah,
hours before. Yeah, we will be geared up and ready to go. Generally speaking, our policies, we will plow if there's about 4 inches. Sometimes we stray from that if it's again, still coming and we're starting to accumulate before that. And then we're going to tackle our priority 1 roads, which are primarily arterials, and our priority 2s, which includes some of the bus routes and primary routes in and out of neighborhoods. And we'll get those clear before we move into priority 3 routes, which are the residential routes. And so, staff know what they're doing. We have some newer staff who will be trained, as it happens, which is just kind of how it goes with this. But I'm confident in Public Works staff, and we'll tackle it as it comes. Every storm is different, so it's hard to really say exactly how our response will look, but we will adapt as it comes. Yeah, absolutely.
Do we do anything about just frozen ice?
We have snow salt on hand, so if there's ice, you know, we can try to combat that with some salt. Ice is a really difficult one to deal with just in general, and the temps I'm seeing that are coming are getting down into low single digits, maybe even 0 or below. And really salt, and even if we had liquid de-icers, which we're planning to implement at the end of the year, hopefully, but we don't have it currently. Even if we had that, those are really not very effective in those really low temperatures. So there's only so much we can do. So sometimes with ice, it's just spread some of the sanding rock to help give people traction on top of it.
And I think it doesn't hurt to remind people that we learned during the pandemic that we can do an awful lot more from home than we think we can. And wait a day or two to venture out after the ice.
Very good point. Yeah, stay home if you don't need to go out is not a bad recommendation.
Indeed. All right. Anyone else have anything else for good of the order? Anything from staff? No? All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion to conclude?
So moved, Councilmember Williams.
Is there a second? All right, thank you both. If there's no objection, the meeting is concluded at 7:51 PM. Thank you, everybody.